All right, hey everybody. I'm Russell. We're back here doing some live coding today. And today we are going to do things a little different. Not so much data visualization as much as using data to drive some video visualization. So I guess I'll start off by just giving you a quick overview of what I'm trying to do. So on the right hand side here, you see this kind of mock-up. So basically Matt and we did a project on the most watched plays of all time last year for YouTube. And I am trying to replicate that with a different set of data this year. So this year, instead of using YouTube data, I wanted to use Reddit data because I thought it was a better kind of pulse of the top plays from the night before, and it's more focused on plays rather than maybe entire videos and moments. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it. So really, I did a bunch of data scraping, and the goal is to then kind of create this SportsCenter top 10 highlight reel-esque video player. So today is going to be all about video and how to work with html5 video in the browser. And so I guess the video player, just to give you a sense of what it looks like, it's going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to basically be this kind of running list of plays, which you can see here, and like this queue of what's up next. And then the central focus is going to be this video element that plays. So that's kind of the baseline where we're starting at. And I guess for those of you who aren't familiar or haven't seen our videos yet, we're using our starter template here. So in the course of coding, you'll see a lot of things like I'm using stylus for pre-processing, and I'm writing in most ES6, and I'm using D3 Jetpack. You can find all that information and more details about that stuff at our starter template, which is available on our GitHub repo. So yeah, basically we're kind of picking up where I started, which is I've already implemented some of the stuff, but I haven't done any of the video, so we'll do that all together today. And by all, I mean some of it. We definitely won't get through everything because video can get pretty nuanced. So I'll just give you a quick breakdown of what this looks like. So our HTML file is pretty sparse right now. You can see we've got like our main container. Then inside that we have our media element. And then we also have this kind of this div called plays. And plays is what you see here, which I've already put together. So plays is simply taking our data file that we have, loading it, and turning it into this kind of list of plays. So each play has some information in it, has like the title, has some more information like the views, comments, date, that type of stuff. So that's all I've put together, and I've done some bare bones styling on it. So we can take a look at what that looks like. So content is again just that main container. I'm keeping this like a full screen experience, so there'll be no scrolling. So it's with 100%. I'm using VH for viewport height and overflow hidden. So if there's some scroll situation that gets cut off or some video overflow. And then yeah, so plays, as I mentioned, is the container for each play. And I'm using Flexbox to kind of lay it all out. And there's not much else to us. I'll post this code as well so you guys can poke around, but we'll mostly just focus on the video interaction today. So let's take a look at the JavaScript file. Again, there's only about 50 lines written, so pretty bare bones, but I'll walk you through it. So we start with, well, the init function, which kicks off our kind of typical stuff that happens. So I have it commented here. So basically, if we want to know if a device is mobile, we've got this class that's added. I kick off the resize listener and I debounce it. So it's not whenever it resizes, it's every 150 milliseconds rather than faster than that, which would be unnecessary. And then we load the data and set up the thing and trigger a resize to redraw everything. So just to give you a sense of what we're looking at here, I'll console log the first element of data so we can see what we're working with. And also, just as like a preface, I'm live streaming while running video and 2 monitors, so apologies in advance if things get glitchy. All right, so here's an example of what a data would look like. So we've got a bunch of things, mostly just like display related things like the views and the date. And then I've got some other things like shortcode that corresponds to the video file. That's like the unique ID essentially. And that's pretty much the only thing we care about now because we're just going to be loading the video. And also the other thing, I guess it's sorted by date, but that also doesn't matter because I've already done that. Or actually it's reverse cron right now. So I guess first things first is, now that I'm gonna get rid of that, let's kind of lay out our the foundation. So we want a single video player. We don't need a load of video for each one. We're gonna swap the source because it would be unnecessary to have all the video elements in there. So to start, let's just make sure our HTML is set up. And so the first thing, obviously, we're going to want is a video tag inside of here. And actually no source because we're going to set that dynamically via the JavaScript. And then I always like to put the plays in line attribute, which means it will let you play it in line on mobile, so it won't just automatically expand to full screen. And then also muted because videos won't autoplay. Sometimes it depends on the browser maybe, unless it's muted by default, and that's also just a good default user behavior to make the user have to kind of opt in to the audio. I'll likely add some sort of splash landing screen, so there'll be like a big, begin audio video experience button, so they'll kind of opt in at the beginning, so they won't be surprised. So yeah, we'll start with that. And I guess the next thing is to actually go ahead and start. Actually, no, the first thing we can do is style the video. So I was kind of picturing this as a full screen background image video, kind of like when you see a full screen background photo. And to do that, there's a few kind of CSS tricks. So let's go ahead and start messing with some style. So we want the media element to be positioned absolutely, because we want it to be the whole screen, and overflow hidden. And let's also go ahead and well, first let's put a background color on that so we can see what it looks like. Okay. So that's good. I also want to just make sure it's going to be full height of the page. So let's go into our resize function in here, set the height to the height of the page, as you can see here. And I just have some convenience variables that I've selected these elements, so I don't have to select them each time. And let's save that. And also I should just check to make sure there aren't any comments and this is actually working and whatnot. Okay, so that's good. Now it's full screen. You see before it had an auto height, which was based actually on the video. So that's good. All right, next thing we want to do is, I guess, let's add some video. So let's go into our JavaScript, and the first thing we want to do, I suppose, is let's see, once we've gotten the data loaded, because again this is going to be asynchronous, so we want to not set up any video until that happens. We probably want to advance the video, so that's going to be kind of the only functionality, advance, and it could maybe go in 2 directions once we get some more UI, but for now we'll just call the function advance. And advance will basically do 2 things. It will swap the source of the video, and then it'll also move this list, because there's actually more than 3. It kind of goes off screen. It's going to be kind of this marquee ticker thing. So let's go ahead and create our advance function. And the first thing, like I mentioned, we want to do is we want to move the plays. So we'll have a function called move plays. And that is actually going to be based on, so we'll keep track of the current play. I actually have a variable up here called current index. So it's just going to know, it's pretty simple. We've just got whatever 50 plays or 100 plays, and it's just going to kind of go in order. So basically in move plays, what we want to do is slide that thing over. So we're going to use a transform translate CSS property. So that we're going to find the offset, and we're only dealing with X. So we want to offset it by play width, which is something I stored, which is just the width of one of those elements, and multiply that by current index, but then also make it negative because transforms work in the negative. And then you can see I have this prefix function up here. So you need the vendor prefixes for transforms. So let's go ahead and we want to transform it on all of those prefixes. So it applies it to one of them, or the one that matches for that browser. So that'll be, let's say, const prefixes equals prefix transform. So that's just going to create all the appropriate prefixes for this. And then actually we don't even need to store that, wherever we can. Prefixes dot for each. So loop through each of them. Just call it P, and create a new transform, translate, and we want to offset X and 0. And then we simply want to grab plays, which is that whole container, and then select the node. So we're not dealing with the D3 selection, and set the style of each transform. So WebKit, MS, regular, to that value we just calculated. Okay, so when we run this, nothing should happen because in theory, the first one is 0. And 0 transform will do nothing. So we can check it out, and there we go. So it translated it by 0. So that's good. But then what we also want to do when we advance, right, is load the next video. So there's a couple things we want to do here. I suppose, well, for starters, we need to grab the video file. So first, let's grab the data. So I've stored my data globally as play data. So we can just actually grab the item of current index. And that should be all good. Though we only care about the short code, which I mentioned is the ID. So we can actually just destructure this and grab the short code from there. And I suppose the first thing we want to do is then update the video element source. So again, actually we need to select the video element. So const video equals media.select video. And then whenever you do HTML5 and JavaScript video stuff, you need to actually use the node, which is the actual DOM element. So I'm also going to create video L, which will just be video.node. Okay. So now that we have those, we can say video dot at source, and I have a whole folder of these videos, and we called it shortcode, and they're all in MP4 format. I guess a quick aside, if you haven't dealt with a lot of videos, I strongly recommend using Handbrake, which is super great for optimizing your video. You really only need MP4. You can use WebM and other formats, but MP4 is the one that works across all browsers. And so you really need to optimize your video because video files get really huge. So you really want them as kind of optimized as possible. So most of the ones I'm dealing with are like 5 to 20 seconds, and I think they're all within like the 1 to 5 megabyte range. So I got them down pretty slim, and actually I can just show you what that looks like. I also reduced the file size, the dimensions, because dimensions will definitely add a lot of bloat as well. And I have actually a trick I'll show you that I like to make if you don't need super high quality video, there's a few tricks you can use. So here, if you look at the source assets video folder, here we go. There you can see the file sizes there. But they're all at 720 by 480, because you just don't need that high fidelity, especially if it's these kind of like almost GIF-like experiences. Okay, so let's get back to it. All right, so the next thing, let's say where's my code? Sorry, I'm not used to this layout. Okay, so we've, in theory, added the source. Let's just start there and see how that likes it. I also like to do everything very piecemeal, because if you write a lot of code and you have an error, you don't know what's going to happen. Okay, this is good. You can now see that we've actually populated a video in here. It's not playing by default, which is good. And it's just stuck on the first frame. And you can also see it's actually not quite full screen. It's just keeping its aspect ratio. So first things first is the full screen trick. We basically want it to function like background size, or background size cover, which is a CSS thing for background images. So to do that, you can really just Google like full screen background video, but this is usually what I do. So in the CSS, we look at the video element. We want to set it to position absolute and center it. So now you'll see that it's offset in the top left corner is now the direct middle. Then we want to set min width and min height to 100%, so it fills up the space. And then width and height auto. And finally, so now it's going to make it a lot bigger. Well, it was already about the right size, so probably didn't notice. And then finally, you want to transform translate, so it then recenters. So translate is going to be 50% of the video element's height and width. So there you go. So now you see we got it going full bleed. Basically, the video is actually getting cut off a little bit on the left and right of the screen. So if we just disable this, you can see, like, if you look at the S here on the padding, that disappears because it needs to stay centered and fills up the screen with its height, so it needs to expand a little horizontally. So anyways, that's the trick. Sometimes that's not good if the dimensions get really weird. Like if we went super narrow, it's going to cut off everything. So you really need to, I'll probably do something different on mobile or at different aspect ratios. Okay, so next up, now we've got our full screen thing. We actually want this to play, right? That's the goal. So the first thing we have to do is actually load it. So it doesn't load all of the video by default. It just loads like what's enough. So we're gonna just kind of force it video l.load. So that'll get it to start like loading, hopefully the whole video, if not most of it. It still won't play, which is fine because we actually don't want it to play initially. So since we're doing our own video player here, I like to wait until it actually can play with most likely not pausing and buffering. So there's a few things you can do. So the first thing is setting up an event listener on what's called the can play through event. So basically that says when the video thinks it's loaded enough data where it could play through without buffering, this will fire. So if you actually just Google like A2 HTML5 video, and I believe this one. So this one's really good. It shows you all the different events and properties of the video. So watch this one right here, claim playthrough. At a certain point, it looks like it only buffered up to here, but it's going to still load while you play. So it determined it had enough loaded to play through. It's not like foolproof, but it's pretty good. So basically when that fires, we want to then say, okay, go ahead and play the video. So let's just actually log out our shortcode, because who knows, we might need this in the future. And then we can say video l.play. Let's see what happens. It half played. Okay, there we go. That's awesome. Okay, so it also just ended. I just happen to know that's the end of the video. Okay, so that's good. So a few things. Also, first, I realized I want to like highlight the one that's currently active. So we should actually go ahead and in our move plays function, let's go ahead and also highlight the current the active play text, I guess. So I have them all saved as play. So we just want to swap classes, which I already created. I think I created in his active state. And since we're just doing this one-to-one mapping of videos to plays on the bottom, we can simply right now, we could just do it by index. I guess we might as no, we should probably do it by short. No, we'll do it by index for now, but it would be better, I suppose, if we did it by like an actual ID, like the shortcode or something. But for this, we can actually just say I is equal to current index. So it's going to only add that class to the current one. So if we save that and check it out, we should see this become, there we go. It becomes a little bigger and opaque. All right, so that's a good start. There's a few other things that I always put in because video can be a little wonky. So for starters, can play through doesn't always fire. So sometimes if like the video is already loaded, so this video could load, and if it's like cached or something, this might actually fire before it even gets to creating this event. So it might just totally miss this. So there are other checks. So I like to use the one called by checking the ready state property. So if we go back to this API page, somewhere here, where is it? Ready state. So there's this property called ready state, and so that changes based on how far along it is. So like ready state 1 is like it's loaded the metadata. Ready state 2 is it can play a little bit. And so basically if it's past 3, I think that means it's fully loaded or mostly loaded. So you can simply just also do like this fallback check. So basically we'll check if the ready state is past 3. And if so, let's go ahead and console.log shortcode. And actually, I'm just going to put these in here so we can keep track of what's going on. So this one is CPT. And actually, I'll flip this around. And this one is, it was triggered by ready state. Actually, I'll be better. I'll use the full name here. Okay. And then it's going to do the same thing though. It's going to call it the play function. I don't think we'll see anything different because ours was working before, but this is definitely something I've seen happen. Okay, so can't play through is the one that fired. But that's there for fallback, which is good. Okay, so I guess the next thing I'd want to do is handle what happens when the video ends. So that's pretty easy. We just have to add another event listener. Actually, yeah, let me add some check if. Okay. So yeah, to add an event listener for when the video finishes, it's pretty straightforward. It's video.onEnded, and we can say handle video ended. So I'll create a new function for that. And so it's going to be pretty straightforward. This is going to be kind of like this autoplay feature. So as when the video ends, it's just going to say like, let's move on to the next one. So all we have to do here is update the, well, first let's fire this so we can just keep track of it. And then let's also, all we have to do is say current index or plus equals 1. And then we'll call advance, even though let's wait and see, make sure everything's working first. My auto formatter switches that to const, so. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so that did what we hoped it would do. And that's a good thing. So now when the video is ended, we obviously just want to go on to the next video. So we updated the current index, and so if we call the advance function, everything should work as desired, right? So when we call advance, we've updated the current index, right? So that's all updated globally. So it'll move plays, it'll get the next shortcode, and just do the rinse and repeat the whole thing. So let's see that in action. There we go. Look at that. We got a new play. Awesome. Okay. So that's great. There's a few things you'll notice there. Like first, you saw the flash between the plays. So that's something I'm going to want to take care of. And then a few other things. So let's go ahead and pause that. The first thing I wanted to do before we add some more features is add this grid overlay, which I like to do often to kind of when you have a slightly grainy picture, especially which we'll have here as you scale out the video. I like to add a grid overlay because it kind of diffuses that graininess a little bit. And yeah, I also just kind of like the aesthetic. So to do that, I actually have I use this so much that I've created a helper function or a preset style. So you can see here, I have this thing called media overlay. It's just a class. So we'll just go ahead and add a div on top of video. And that will just, let's see, it should be, oh right, it has to refresh. There you go. You saw it much more clearly in the yellow. So actually, let me just comment out the video for now. So there you go. There's this. Oh no, it doesn't like it. There's a gridded pattern there. And actually, I can just here. Let's go to the style. If I just say opacity 0. There you go. I don't know if you can pick that up on your screen, but there's a grid now overlaid. It's a little intense on mine actually. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the opacity. Like, I don't know, a third. Okay, so now it's real subtle. And I think that'll be nice when we put the video. Let's bring that back. It just diffuses a little bit. It makes the text way easier to read because it's kind of got this like black layer in between a little bit. So yeah, that was just something I like to do, and I think it's working. Okay, so let's go back to the code. All right, what else can we do here? Okay. So we've got it advancing. One thing that's definitely problematic was the flicker. I guess another thing that we're going to want to consider is preloading. So I'm on, obviously all these files are loaded locally, but that's not going to be the case when it's on the internet, and people have different speeds, and some people are on 3G, so all the connections aren't going to be instant. So we're going to want to do a few things, which we won't get to all of them right now, but maybe we'll get to some of the basics. So first, I guess the first thing that's pretty obvious is, well, to me, is to put on a poster image. So while the video is loading, it won't show anything if there isn't any information yet. So if that's like a second or something, it's going to look weird. So you can have a poster image on the video element, and a single image, we can make it even, like we could make it low res and blurry. It'll just be enough to have a placeholder. So we should go ahead and add a poster image. So while it is loading, there will be something there. So we'll have a poster image, and then eventually I'll probably also have like some sort of, loading, buffering, visual. And so again, I've got some poster images, I think, in my folder, but they're not the right dimension, so it's actually going to look a little weird right for now, but we'll deal with it. I think it's a poster. Okay. So actually, let's go ahead and not even call load and see if the poster image shows up. It should look pretty similar as the first frame of the video. Oh, it didn't find it. Let me check the directory. Oh, it's not an MP4 file. Duh, it's a JPEG. So you see that? Well, I'll refresh it again. And actually, let me set autoplay. Oh no, I don't think we have to set. I'm not sure why it's autoplaying actually. Oh right, because these are still. Okay, perfect. So you can see our poster actually doesn't take up, it's a slightly different dimension. So there's a couple things we could do. We could actually just put this as a background image. And like, so then or actually I'd put it over the top of the video and then hide it when the video is triggered to load. That's probably what I'll end up doing. But for now, we'll leave it like this. But you'll just notice a little flicker when it transitions. But now we have a poster image in. The next thing that's probably a good idea is, let's see. So I don't think we've witnessed this yet. But let's see if we can play with the network settings. So we're going to simulate fast 3G. Let's go ahead and make these go again. Okay. All right, so what I'm trying to have happen is the can play through event doesn't necessarily fire a single time. So that's actually something that you have to be mindful of. If the video is on a slow network and it happens to like pause halfway through, so I'm hoping this happens, and then has to like reload, the can play through again will actually fire multiple times. Okay, so there's it once. Also, you notice how long that video just took to load because we're simulating 3G. So definitely we're going to want poster images in some sort of user experience behavior to indicate that. Perfect. It just happened. So you see can't play through actually fired twice. So that's something that we're going to keep in mind, because the next thing I was actually going to do is starting to get into preloading the upcoming image or the upcoming video, right? Because if we know it's on deck and in queue, we should, and nothing else is downloading once the video starts playing, it behooves us to start loading that next video, so then we're not waiting for like a couple seconds in between if they're on a slow connection. So let me disable this. All right. So let's see. The first thing I was going to do, right? All right. So this can potentially fire multiple times, so that's good to know. But we also, like, these are doing the same thing, so we can probably streamline this. So basically, when either of these fire, we would want to say handle, or just say play video. Same thing here. Play video. We don't care where it comes from anymore. So let's go ahead and create a play video function. So when play video is called, that means we know that it's ready to play according to the data. So we can do a couple of things here. So the first thing I want to do, as I mentioned, is, well, first we should have the video l.play. That should be somewhere in here. What else do we want to do? So as you saw, it could potentially call multiple times. So we need to do some sort of check. So the check that actually ends up working is checking if the video is paused, which is another attribute. So we can actually say video l.paused. And if it is paused, that's good. We want to actually go ahead and play it, and possibly do other stuff. So, and actually, I just noticed from experience that if the can play through fired a second time, the video could actually be not paused, even though it's like stuck. It's considered not paused, even though it's like buffering. So this will actually be truthy or falsy, depending on that. So it's good to check for this because we don't need to say play again if it's already playing. And then the other thing that would be good to do is actually we want to then preload some stuff, right? So let's go ahead and create a function called preload next. All right, so we could do a couple of things here. We could start preloading the video. I think it's safe to just start with the poster image, because if we have the poster image, at least there's going to be something. Once the video finishes, it'll immediately jump to the next image or the first frame of the next video, even if the video takes a little while. So I think, and it's also pretty weird doing video preloading, but we can try it out. And it also just might be a lot if it's still like you don't want to be loading a second video while it's still trying to load and play the first one. But we can also maybe like do some sneaky detecting if it's desktop or mobile, if it could handle it. But we'll start with just the image. So I have a utility thing that I use all the time called load image. It's just this little function I've created, which does what it says. It loads the image, and when it's loaded, it gives you a callback. So we're going to go ahead and import that. All right. All right. So in preload next, we want to say load image. And actually, we're going to need that short code again. But we actually want the next shortcode, right? So we actually want to say const shortcode equals play data of next indexed. Okay, and there'll definitely be some stuff like if it's the last one. I guess we should just do that. Right, so we actually don't care about doing this if it's if next index is less than, or let's say is greater than or equal to play data length, return false. So we don't need to do any of this. Otherwise it'll move on and it'll grab the shortcode, and then we call this load image function. So we're gonna load the image, which is the poster image. And that, as you can see, it takes a URL and it returns a callback. And this callback returns an error or the actual image. If you wanted to like throw it on canvas or something. We actually don't care about the image, so we can just return an error. So let's see if there's an error, or if there's no error. You know what, if there's an error, we should probably flag it. Otherwise, we actually don't need to do anything here. Here, I'm gonna stop this for a second. It's very distracting. Yeah, we don't need to do anything because the image will be loaded. So then when the poster tries, when it adds it as the poster attribute, it'll already be loaded and cached. So you're kind of good to go. So that's it for that, actually. Know what we can do is, because there will eventually be a kind of left and right, like the ability for the user to navigate and go forward or backward, we should actually cache if they have actually done this or not, so we don't keep calling this load image function. So let's see, up here we can create this thing called image, or image cache, I guess, and it's just going to be like a dictionary. So down here where we grab the shortcode, we can actually say, okay, if image cache of shortcode exists, let's just get out of here. We will return false again, break the function, and it won't keep going. But if it doesn't exist, then we want to load it. And if there wasn't an error, let's say image cache of shortcode equals true. Okay, so the image cache, if when it loads, it saves that spot in the dictionary. So then the next time, if we were to call it again, which could even happen when it fires multiple times, it will see that image cache of shortcode is true, and it's gonna exit out. All right, so that's our preloading. We can probably see it in action here if we check out the network tab. We should see, let's go to images. All right, so we see PH, which is, which hasn't loaded yet. So you should always see the next one. So there's that third one. So the next one should look, the court should look like this if we're lucky. And there we go. So you can see it's staying one step ahead. So that's good. So if we wanted to, we could kind of do the same thing, I suppose, with video. I'm not sure I want to do that because that's maybe just loading a lot of unnecessary video, but you know what, we won't do that for now. Let's get on to some other, I just want to maybe show one or two other things. All right, so I guess the last thing we can go over real quick is updates, right? So I'm not doing anything with this right now in terms of, oh, this isn't updating. We should check that out. I'll start there. Let's see, why is our move plays not working? Move plays. Console.log off x. get rid of that obnoxious yellow while we wait. Oh, it's just not actually transforming it over. It's just changing the active state. Let's see. Plays because it's getting 0, 0. That's not ideal. Transform plays no style P. Off X. You know what? I think we actually need to say pixels. I'm used to not dealing with pixels anymore. I think that's why. There we go. All right, nice. It's slid over. Okay. Last thing I was going to say is there's a nice, where is it? Here we go. The time update function. So this is super useful if you want to do something that's synced to the video. Like I said, I'm not planning on doing anything with this, but I figure I could just show you real quick. So it's real straightforward. It's simply adding another listener. So video.onTimeUpdate handle time update function handle time update. And you'll see that this fires quite frequently and basically just fires what it sounds like whenever the time of the video updates. So if you want to create a progress bar, that's perfect for it. You'll see Amber is actually releasing a project in a couple hours or tomorrow that uses this in a clever way. Where basically it syncs something that's happening in the video to some data, which is a data viz kind of thing. So it's pretty neat. So yeah, so basically you can call this, and then if you want to make a progress bar, for example, you can say video l.current time and const time equals, so we can, this will tell you what it sounds like. It's the time in seconds of the video. That's totally not right. That's not how you spell current time. Sweet. So there you go. And then if you wanted to do it as a progress bar, you could do it and get the duration of the video. So it's actually just construct this and grab the time and the duration from the video element and go ahead and log those. Actually, const progress equals current time divided by duration. So .log progress. And I am having a tough time writing current. That double T. So interesting, the first time I fired it was not a number, which is good to know. So that means one of the either current time or duration. I bet duration was still at 0. So let's log all this out. Current time, duration, progress. So that's something that we'd actually have to handle. Okay, so duration is not a number when current time was 0. So just good to know. All right, so stop logging this out. Let's make an actual progress bar because I would probably actually use that. So let's just quickly add on top of the media overlay, maybe div class media progress. And inside that, we'll have a span class progress bar. All right, So let's style that. So we've got media progress, and we want that to be positioned absolutely. And let's have it run across the whole screen. And let's just make it 1 rem, and let's give it color for now to see it. Cool. And then our span, which we called progress bar. We don't need to nest it. Display block starts out is with 0. Let's say height 100%. Actually, let's say just so you can see it. I don't know. All right, so you see that popped up there. So let's just make these not as obnoxious for now. Let's just go with like black and gray or something. I don't have a, oh, off black, gray dark, oops. All right, so then we can just, so we'll start with at 0, and we can simply just store that const progress equals media.select progress bar. And then in our time update, progress dot style width, and we want to send a %, so it's a const % equals d theta format progress. Oops, stop line. There you go. We've got our progress bar clunking along there. We could make it a little smoother by actually adding like a transition, maybe. Usually I wouldn't have such a wide one for such a short period. Let's see, progress bar, transition width. Let's do it super fast because it updates really quick. And linear. It's still a little funny. Yeah, check out that progress bar. Sweet. All right. I think that's gonna do it for today. I'm getting hungry. Gotta go have some lunch, but thank you for joining, and hopefully this showed you a little bit about how to deal with video. I'll post my finished code when I have more stuff, video features, but this is mostly the heart of it. The rest is doing some polish, like I said, maybe preloading some other video. Obviously working on the layout and design and adding some user interface features, but this is it in a nutshell. So have a good day, everybody. Bye.